It's the Franklin Show, live from Franklin, with America's favorite adopted pup, Franklin Delano Roosevelt Lloyd Wright Sinatra Seltzer, and his friend and favorite Franklin dog adopter, Michael Seltzer. I'm your announcer, former big-time radio legend in my own mind, Dick Purtan. And now, here's Franklin.
Well, thank you so much to my great band and this great studio audience. Welcome again to the Franklin Show. It is a pleasure and a privilege to be hosting this very special hour about a radio station we all grew up listening to in the 60s. It was October 1963 when Keyner 13 hit the airwaves with this unbelievable sound and a group of Keymen of music, and you're going to hear and see them all again. Coming up on the special edition of the Franklin Show, Keyner 13, and we'll be right back.
You're not going to get it all right. Just make sure you nail the big stuff.
Mama!
Like making sure your kids are in the right seat for their age and size. Get it right at nhtsa.gov/the right seat.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Franklin Show, this very special edition. I love radio, as you all know, and I've done a series of these cavalcade of stars from the radio business back in the 60s. And this one is truly special and very, very personal for me because on October 31st, 1963, WKMH Radio launched as WKNR Keyner 13. And it was the Battle of the Giants, an attention-grabbing promotion that got a lot of eyes and ears. And Keyner went from 0 to 100 in a matter of minutes. And the disc jockeys that were popular and brought that Keyner sound are assembled here today on this very special edition of the show. I am so pleased to welcome a whole cavalcade of former Keyner DJs and a couple of archivists who know a lot about the history of Keyner 13. So I want to start out with the illustrious Paul Cannon. Paul is a man who was the music director and program director of Keyner 13. And I have been friends with all of you guys for many, many years. Paul, you're one of my favorites, and I'm so happy to see you and have you back in my company with this great group of stars from Keyner 13. So welcome, Paul Cannon.
Great. I love it. It's great to be with you two and to see you two. And it's just great to be alive, to enjoy this group and to continue to be fans of radio. It's fantastic.
And there you have that booming voice, that golden voice of Paul Cannon from the 1960s.
Somehow, I'm not sure how it happened, but it's still here. And I treasure it, as a matter of fact. You know, I told people when I talk to them on the phone all the time, they never think somebody that is 92 years old sounds like this.
God bless, man. God bless.
God bless you. Yeah.
You not only sound great, you look great. And Paul, there are so many stories, but I want to start with one quick story that came up yesterday. I got a phone call from David Handelman, Handelman Music, whose first day on the job, when his father said, "Okay, kid, I'm going to give you a shot at this business, David. So go out there and sell some records and get some airplay on WKNR." And he tells me the story of his first day in the business, going out to your office at Keyner 13 and walking into your office, and you had a timer on your desk, and you flipped that timer over, one of those egg timer things, you know, the sands of whatever, and told the kid to go. And he was trying to sell you Lawrence Welk, for God's sakes, which made no sense at all. Am I right?
I don't remember anything about Lawrence Welk. In fact, I don't remember that exchange at all. But yeah, I had a very special built timer that I used to help maintain some sanity in terms of the time I was able to spend with the record promotion men. I was seeing, 12, 15 every day that we did the meetings, and we had to limit the time with them because each of them had 5 hits that had to go on the music guide instantly, and I had to talk to each of them, but had to put a time limit on it, or else each of them would have been there for the full hour or so that I had time for. So,
right. So you were sort of, you were the Rosalie Trombley of Keener 13, right?
Pardon?
I mean, basically, that's what Rosalie did at CKLW. We just did a show with the CK folks last week, and we talked.
Does she have an egg timer too?
I don't know if she had an egg timer. That never came up. But you were also the program director, and so you had to do some hiring and firing, right?
Yes, unfortunately, I got that. I started out doing overnights on Keener actually because I was away for a while and came back to doing overnights, and then that changed when the Sweeney thing happened, and I got the job as music director. And then Frank said, "Well, we're going to make you the assistant program director," and then a little further on, he said, "We'll make you the program director." In title, anyhow. Frank Maruca still was the power behind all of the things that we were doing on the air. But the question you're really asking again is what again? I'm sorry.
Well, I mean, you had to hire and fire a lot of people, which is never.
Oh yeah,
the hiring part is fun. The firing part, and I'm guessing in this group of people on the screen, you fired most every one of them. So.
Well, yeah, Bob, I'm sorry, and Scott, I'm sorry. But I was under pressure. I was told you will terminate these people, along with Jerry and Ted Clark. And I think Dick is the only guy who got away from this somehow or the other. Hang in there, but
we got Dick Purtan coming up later in the show, and this is a guy who can't hold a job. I mean, he's been at every radio station, so that.
So it was a bloodbath, and then we had to find people to fill those spots, and it was difficult, very difficult for me on a personal basis because these are not just guys on the air; these were cohorts, these were friends, these are people that I associated with daily.
Right.
It was awful.
Well, it's a bloody business, but you did a great job, and you were part of this incredible group of. We call them the Keymen of music. That's what the Keener 13 DJs were. And those years, 1963, 64, 65, unbelievable years with major talent. And it was such an exciting period in radio. And the coolest thing about Keener 13 was their playlist, which was the shortest playlist in the history of radio. 31 songs on a playlist in just constant rotation over and over and over, playing the hits, where other stations had 80, 100 songs in their playlist. Keener had 31 songs. And here's a funny little story. I used to ride home on my Hebrew school bus listening to Keener on my little boombox with all my friends. And because I knew that every day at the same time, Keener 13 played back the top 13 songs in ascending order, and I had it committed to memory, being the bonehead that I was back in those days, nothing much has changed, I would be able to predict the next song, and no one understood how I could possibly know that the next song is going to be A Hard Day's Night by the Beatles. And they would say, Seltzer, how do you know this?
That's funny.
Isn't that the funniest story? I love that. And that was the beauty of Keener. And I would go racing up to the record store every week to get my Keener music guide so I could memorize that top 13 list and be able to do that on the Hebrew school bus and mystify everybody. Paul Cannon, I'm so in awe of our long-standing friendship. You had a business that my company, SKM, used to handle as an advertising agency called Comfort Keepers. And for years, you were in touch on a regular basis with my mom, Estelle. And I had no idea until you told me once at a party, one of our radio reunion parties at my house, she goes, I've got another Seltzer in my life that I like a lot, maybe even more than you, and that was my mom Estelle. And so I thought that was just great.
I still have that company. I'm still the CEO, and I go in there a couple times a week to sit back and watch what's going on. My youngest daughter, is the manager every day, but it's been a good business, and we started that when I was 69 years old, and we've been doing it for 24 years now.
I was proud to have Comfort Keepers as a client for many, many years. I've been retired for a long time, and so anyway, I'm just I'm delighted to have you and speak to you again, and I'm glad that I got a hold of you yesterday, coming back off of a cruise, and to remind you that you were important in this story, and I'm glad that you're on the show today.
I would have been really upset to have missed this, and I really appreciate the chance to meet everybody again. Thank you.
All right, now I'm going to move on to let's go with Bob Green. Bobby Green in Houston, Texas, or where are you now? What part of Texas are you in?
We moved 3 years ago to Austin.
Austin, Texas.
I've got 3 sons, 2 of whom live in Austin with their families, and my wife passed away in April of 23. And it's a good thing we moved here because I've got a lot of help and whatever. With Paul Cannon just down there doing all he did. And Paul, it's so good to see you.
It's good to be seen when you're 92. I keep telling everybody that.
Well, Bobby, you are one of my favorites, and we've been friends for years. And you were instrumental in the entire sound of Keener, and had a highly popular afternoon show. So talk to me about your hiring, and you don't have to talk about your firing because we already heard about that from
that was after
Paul Cannon. But when did you come to Keener? What year was that? 64?
I had been in 61. I came to WKMH, and that was from a station in Geneva, New York, in the Finger Lakes in New York. And to get a job at any station the size of on the market the size of Detroit was quite a challenge. And I was at WKMH for 9 months when I got the call from somebody named Charlie Murdoch, who was the program director of WQAM in Miami, which was a terrific station, had great ratings. And I left KMH, and when I went to Miami, I had made good friends with Frank Maruca. Excuse me. And we kept in touch. I wanted to know when they were going to make some changes. Frank had some ideas for changes to the radio station. And instead, they hired the management of the radio station, hired a guy named Mike Seltzer. I'm hearing strange noises here. Anyway, where was I? Are you still there?
Yeah, we can hear you, Bobby.
Yeah, I'm getting a strange hum. Okay. Anyway, I wanted to do the night show because in Top 40 radio and in radio that goes to the younger demographic by and large, although Keener had a good cross section of age groups listening. Nonetheless, I wanted the night show because that was the first time you're going to see a change from WKMH had a 0.3 rating on the Pulse and Hooper. And within a month, we did some breakouts of the ratings, went to a 7. And from a 7, we went to a 14. And after 4 months, we were at a 29 share. And any radio station today who has a, there aren't any have a 29 share, but if they have a 10 share, they're number 1. So Keener was far and away number 1, although it couldn't be heard on the east side. Our signal was so poor that it cut off Woodland Brush Street right in there. It disappeared. And yet we still had high ratings in the 20s.
Yeah, you guys were an unbelievable powerhouse team. And I didn't realize, Bobby, that you came from KMH with Robin Seymour. Robin was one of the original KMH DJs who made the transition from KMH to Keener 13. And then, of course, Robin went on to fame on CKLW and doing his dance party show, Swingin' Time. So, but Bob, you were a big part of that Keener lineup of Keymen. And I'm just so grateful to know you all these years, to have shared some very memorable radio reunion periods together. And I'm just glad that you're on the show today. All right, I want to move on now to, I hear that Dick Purtan is actually on screen here now. There he is, he's waving. So let's talk to this guy, Dick Purtan, who,
Yes, sir.
as I have said many, many times, one of my dear, dear friends in the business. But here's a guy who just could not hold a job. He started out, he was at Keener, he went to XYZ, he went to WKQI, he went to Cozy, he went to WOMC, and yet everybody still thinks highly of this guy. But you know, his resume reads like it's like a bad story. But anyway, Dick, I remember the story about you being offered the job at Keener, and it was first to replace the illustrious and beloved and recently deceased Gary Stevens in the 7 o'clock slot. And you thought to yourself, there's no way I can replace this guy, Gary Stevens, who went on to become one of the good guys on WMCA in New York forever. But then eventually you got another call and they said, hey, how about you do the 10 o'clock PM slot? And you thought, okay, I'll give this one a whirl. So take it from there. You got the call, then what happened?
I have no idea.
Let's live it up with Dick Purtan on WKNR Keener 13.
Dick Purtan Show from WKNR Keener 13 and all that blah, blah, blah. 10 away, WKNR time. More music more often and all that stuff. Let's see, we have a new forecast in. Detroit area weather forecast, it says. Temperature is 67. Oh, wait a minute. How can it be? How can this be new if the thing up on the wall says 60? Once again, I see that the news department has completely fouled up, and although Jim Martin claimed this is a new forecast, this probably cleared the wire at 7:45. As a matter of fact, 7 p.m. temperature he just brought in. Oh, excuse me, I'm reading the wrong one. I'm so sorry. This one says 10 p.m. Jim, my humble apologies to you, sir. Temperature is indeed 60, wind east-northeast at 6. Let's see, the weather I can't read it. Wait a moment.
Oh, I just love your aftershave lotion, sir.
How about a kiss, baby?
But I just can't stand your face.
That's pretty good, huh?
He's the guy that's really got you dry.
But after that, I'm ashamed to say my name is 13. As you know, Scott Regen is a song of the series called a skateboard song because I gave a big contest, and so I had to come into town, and nobody had ever heard of me before. And as a matter, I might add that a lot of people in this town still haven't. And so I have invented my own contest called the Picture Contest, which was a very creative title. I found an old manual on radio. So what you do is draw a picture of what you think I look like and send that picture to WKNR box 3100 Detroit 13. No, I did it again. You send that the drawing, you send it to picture WKNR box 1300 Detroit 31 Michigan. Do that for me right now, and then the winner gets a cheap Japanese transistor radio. Whoever comes the closest to identifying me. I mean, what I look like. You know. This is called Yes, Scott Regen is a fake, because he got his own contest. Try to make one up.
And that sort of sums up your career, basically.
Very much it does. Yes, indeed. What was the question again, please?
Oh, forget it. So, Dick, eventually you ended up doing mornings on Keener. Is that right, or am I misremembering that?
Yeah, no, there's a story to it. And is Jerry Goodwin there on this?
Yeah, Jerry's here. Jerry's here. He's on the phone, though.
Okay, Jerry could probably tell it better than I could because I only heard about the story. Let me think if I've got this thing right. Jerry, you were working all night long one time, and Swing and Sweeney was late, or the vice versa, something like that, on a Saturday morning?
Yes.
Oh, that's not good. All right. Well, wait, Jerry. We'll come back to that. You'll tell that story later. I'm gonna mute you because it's too. We're getting.
I'll look forward to hearing that.
All right. This is why these guys were so good on the radio.
Oh,
because they didn't have to deal with the visuals. All right, but I do know the story. But I'm going to let Jerry tell it because Swingin' Sweeney is a whole nother topic.
Looking forward to it.
All right, Dick. So you had this run on Keener. Is there anything in particularly memorable that you care to share that was part of that era for you?
I had just come up from Cincinnati, WSAI, which was a fine station. And I went to another fine station, WKNR in Detroit. And I was kind of scared to death to go up there. You mentioned Gary Stevens, God rest his soul.
Yeah.
I heard him on the air, and I thought he was really terrific, very good. He was, by the way, maybe you do know this, he was from Buffalo, as am I.
Yes.
Right. And I didn't know Gary in Buffalo at all, but I got to know him here. And what a shame. He passed away, 2 weeks ago or something?
Yeah, yeah. Well, the last time I saw Gary Stevens was at Nellie Knorr's funeral. And Nellie Knorr, who was the owner of Knorr Broadcasting, which owned Keener.
Great lady.
Great lady, and passed away. And I was there, and it was Gary Stevens, and it was Bobby Green, and it was, I can't remember who else. That was the last time I saw Gary. But one of the good guys for sure.
Yeah.
So, all right. Well, thank you, Mr. Purtan, for joining us on this wonderful tribute to Keener 13. I'm going to move along to another superstar, if you will, and that is the great Scotty Regen. Scotty, welcome back to the Franklin Show for the second time in 2 weeks.
This is John Lennon. You're probably listening to Scott Regen now. If you're not, well, you can't hear what we're saying. Ta-ra.
Hello, this is Paul McCartney, talking to a gentleman called Scott Regen who does his best to keep you happy.
Hi, this is Scott Regen of the Miracles, and you're listening to the Smokey Robinson Show.
Their very first song, their very first hit, was recorded about 3:30 in the morning at Motown when Berry Gordy got an inspiration and called him up and said, come on over and let's do it. The song was Shop Around, the group Smokey Robinson and the Miracles!
Hi, we're the Supremes. I'm Diane, and you're listening to the Scott Regen Show.
And now back with the Supremes, our special guests on the show tonight.
Hi, we're the Four Tops, and this is Levi, and I'm proud to be an honorary member of the Scott Regen Burger Club, and I urge you to join. Send your name and address to Burger Club, WKNR, Box 1300, Detroit 31.
Hi, this is Florence of the Supreme Burgers. If you'd like to join the Scotty Regen Burger Club, send your name and address to Burger Club, WKNR, Box 1300, Detroit.
Hello, this is Herman of Herman's Hermits, reminding you to listen to the Scott Regen Burger Show and be a burger.
Hello there, this is John Berger, talking on the Scott Burger Show. If you want to be a burger, well, we're all a lot of burgers around here, so join in with the burger people.
You skateboarded in to Keener 13, and probably the most unique promotion I can ever remember. And Keener was giving away skateboards, and you took over and created this unbelievable show, the Scott Regen Show and the Burger Club. So let's talk about your entry into Detroit radio and Keener 13. Scotty, go for it.
Well, let's see. First, I think it's important to say that on Dick Purtan's behalf, that he created a version of what Scott Shannon created at Z100, a massive morning show. And he created it out of nothing. It was just first Dick Purtan, and then it was all sorts of things going on. So it was quite a thing, and it deserves a lot of credos for that.
Oh, thank you, Jerry.
And as far as me, in listening to what Scott Westerman said about my book and how it showed my evolution as a person, I think that one regarding excuse me, what happened at Keener and all the stuff that I did, it just sort of happened. And I didn't plan any of it. And I'm not really sure exactly how it happened. And but it was great. But the most important thing about all this regards my appearance at WKNR, regards Jerry Goodwin and Bob Green. I was doing the all night show, amazingly enough, at WFUN in Miami. And Jerry Goodwin was doing mornings at QAM. So every morning at 5:15, I would say something to Jerry Goodwin that only he would know. And then he would answer me on the air at 6:15.
Wow.
Only the two of us would know that was going on. So that was one thing. And this all regards my evolution as to who I am now and what I do now, and since Scott mentioned the book. So then Bob Green was on in the afternoon at QAM, as Bob said. Charlie Murdoch hired him. And I used to listen to Bob in the afternoon. We didn't know each other. And I didn't know at the time that he listened to me. So I was working at WHB in Kansas City. I was doing mornings. And I saw where Gary was leaving. And I said, oh, here is a chance for me to go to WKNR. And I'd love to do nights. I'd like to be another Alan Freed. That was always my dream since I listened to Alan Freed in New York when I was a kid. So I called Bob, not knowing that he listened to me on the all night show. And I said, hi, Bob, this is Scott. This is Rock Robbins. I was Rock Robbins back then, and that's who I was on FUN. And I said, I don't know if you know me. Said, oh, I do know you. I used to listen to you all the time. And I said, well, there's an opening at WKNR. What do you think? And he said, oh, I think you'd be perfect. He said, but you have to hurry up and send me a tape because Frank Maruca is close to picking somebody else. So he said, send me a tape and send it right away. So I sent him a tape. And the next day or two, he got the tape and he said, it's very good, but you need to make one or two changes. So I said, okay. So I made the changes and I sent him another tape. And he said, you're very close. You have to make one more tape. So I made the other tape and I sent the tape. And the next morning at 10:30, I got home, the morning after I sent the tape. And Bob called and he said, Frank loves the tape. He's going to call you any minute. You've got the job. So where all this ties into my evolution was all the flower power stuff that was going on with the Beatles and George Harrison in the 60s. That had a great influence on my life. And when I went back to New York in 1977, I went to a place called Integral Yoga Institute, which is still around today. And I began teaching classes there for about 15 years, about 1986. And in 2002, I got my meditation teaching certification. And that led to my teaching some classes at Rollins College here in Orlando, Winter Park, a suburb of Orlando, and to my evolution now as the person that I am and the life that I live, just like I lived the other life as a Keener DJ. And the end of all of this, and ask any questions, of course, is that the real significance of this is none of this would have happened without Bob Green.
God bless Bob Green and
And none of this would have happened without my working at WFUN. And
but you know what? It was genius marketing. Whoever the marketing person was at Keener back in those days, I don't know if they had a marketing director, but whoever created the concept of skateboarding in from
that was me.
That was you?
Yep, I created skateboarding. I created the Burger Club. All the interviews I did with the Supremes, the Four Tops, the Beatles, all the promo, all that stuff. Somehow, I did all that. And there was an interview with Holland Dozier Holland, and someone asked Brian, how did all that stuff happen at Motown, the 13 #1 hits and all the stuff you did? It's a video, it's there somewhere. And Brian said, something to what Dick said a minute ago. I have no idea how it happened. And I really don't. It was just, I was caught up in the moment, sort of like Dylan and the Beatles were, and it just came and then it went.
Well, you know what? You're very humble, Scott. And now that we finally got to the bottom line is, because I've always talked about the skateboard promotion. I'm a marketing guy, right? So I remember things that are completely outrageous and unique. And that was a tremendous way to introduce a new personality in Detroit radio.
Thank you.
If that was you, God bless, man. I mean, I know the Burger Club and all those other things that you created.
Again, I'll tell you something to show you the spontaneity of it. I was on the air one night, and I used to answer the request lines so that I could get the pulse of the listener. So I answered the phone, and a guy said, I said, what would you like to hear? He said, I'd like to hear whatever. And I said, great, thanks for calling. And he said, you're welcome, Burger. And I said, what did you say? He said, I said, you're welcome, Burger. And I said, what does that mean? He said, well, everybody now in school says burger. You're burger this, you have burger homework, you have a burger girlfriend. Everybody's a burger. So that's where that came from. So again, it just happened.
It just happened.
It just happened. Yeah.
Well, it was very memorable, as were you. And then you had an illustrious career that followed. You went to CKLW. You were very popular there, and then went into the record business. So I'm so thankful to have known you and to hear your story, and finally getting to the bottom line of the skateboard story, because I think that's tremendous. Now I want to bring in Jerry Goodwin, because Jerry keeps coming up, and for whatever reason, my friend Jerry, we got some feedback here, Jerry. Can you hear us?
Oh yeah, I can.
Oh, that's not going to work. All right, you know what? I'm gonna call Jerry back on his cell phone and see if that is any better. And but let's move on to Steve Schram, who is a tremendous member of this little fan club, if you will, and just recently retired from Michigan Public Radio after many, many years of serving the community. Steve, welcome to the Franklin Show.
Michael, it's a pleasure. It's a pleasure to be on with you and our beloved icons who, frankly, inspired myself and Scott Westerman, and frankly, scores of people in the mid-'60s, inspired us with their talent, with their comedy, with the drive that they had for building a fascinating radio program and a great sound across WKNR. I am an original Keener kid. I was there from the first day, October 31st, 1963. I listened to each one of the fine gentlemen on the air here over the course of years, beyond just being a listener as a young teen. It's been my distinct pleasure to befriend each one of these gentlemen and be with them on Keener radio reunions that we did in Detroit, having the chance to be with them one-on-one in person in various settings over the course of decades, and really consider them true friends and mentors and the inspiration to my career. And I think I'd like to take this opportunity to thank them all, including Paul Cannon, because Paul, while we didn't know each other well, we've got to know each other over the reunions, and certainly have appreciated what you brought to the station as well. But each person, Bob was so special to me when I was first starting in campus radio at Michigan State. I recall listening to Bob certainly on the air during the Keener days, but when I started as a freshman at Michigan State, I found him on the air on Christmas Eve. I think it was Christmas Eve, 1971. I was home. I was just dialing around the radio, and I found Bob Green on WXYZ, of all places, and called him up and told him how I just admired the sound of Keener and everything he had to do with it. And Bob Green invited me, a freshman in college, to his house so that I could just hear the stories of Keener. I brought a 7-inch reel of tape, and he says, I'll fill it up with whatever you want. So I had Keener promos and Keener jingles and PSAs, and that became the start of a wonderful friendship with Bob Green over all of those years. And with Scott Regen, I was an original member of the Burger Club. My burger card was 14,402. The first prize I ever won with my Burger Club card was tickets to see Herman's Hermits and the Tidal Wave at Olympia Stadium. I was the 13th caller, and I had Burger Club card 14,402. I still have the ticket stub to this very day. As a matter of fact, producer Steve, I want you to call up one of the images I have there of the Keener reunion in New York City, which I believe was 2014. There you are with a number of the Keener originals, starting from left to right. Robin Seymour, both the late Robin Seymour, Swing and Sweeney. There's Gary Stevens, Jerry Goodwin. We brought Pat St. John in. He was a Keener kid there in his early development. And of course, Bob Green. It was a meeting of the Keener originals in Times Square, celebrating, I think it was 50 years past the first year anniversary. And that was a gathering that Scott Westerman and I were just so honored to be invited to, and has been one of those iconic moments of our love for the station. And one of the things that I want Scott Westerman to talk about, is how we have tried to continue to make the memory and the positive impression of Keener last on to multiple generations, starting with a website and now continuing with a live stream of Keener13.com. I want to call up a couple more images right now while I'm talking, just so you can see. Producer Steve, would you call up the book cover that you can see in your tray there? This was one of my early finds. I came across this at a garage sale. Somebody had an original Keener book cover, which were available at the music stores along with the Keener music guides. And you can see the initial Keymen of music lineup, starting with Sweeney and then Robin Seymour. There's the young Jerry Goodwin. Gary Stevens was doing afternoon then, and Bob Green was doing early evenings, and then Bill Phillips overnight. I can tell you that I had all my books covered with Keener book covers back then. And one of the things that was inspirational to me was having the chance to meet Frank Maruca in the 1969. My father had met Frank Maruca, who was at that time, the title for him was station manager. My father met him and said, I have a son who loves your station and would love to know more about a career in radio. Frank Maruca invited us down on a Friday afternoon. I got to meet all the Keymen of music at that time. I got to meet Bob. I don't know if you remember it. A lot of these were hallway introductions, and got a complete tour of the station. And then at the end of that, we went to his office, and he told me what I should study if I wanted to do certain things in radio. If I wanted to be in sales, I should take these courses in college. If I wanted to do programming, try this. If I wanted announcing, try some other sets of college courses. And then at the end of the conversation, he said, so tell me, what is it that you'd like to do in our business? And I said, well, frankly, I'd someday like to sit behind your chair at your desk. Well, 29 years after that meeting, I became the general manager of Keener's successor station, WNIC, in that same office, behind that same desk.
Wow.
So
What an honor.
Childhood dream for me to be inspired by WKNR, to be able to light that interest and curiosity and drive to make that my career, and to have the magic, if you will, of taking my career in that building as the general manager of the successor station of WNIC. So I have always said that we have been inspired by these gentlemen on this show today. And I just wanted to take this opportunity to give my salute and thanks. And even with Dick Purtan, not only did I meet him early on in my career, Dick and I got to work together at WOMC. And here's Dick receiving the National Radio Hall of Fame Award back in, gosh, Dick, I don't know when that was, 2004 or something like that. But this was in Chicago. So I've had such a good, enjoyable time being able to be close to my Keymen of music throughout my life. And I'm really grateful for that. And I am thankful that they're on the call here today. And I just want to let them know that it inspired my career. So
well, you gloss over a couple of key important things, Steve, because you're such a gentleman and you're so humble. But you also had an illustrious career on your own as a morning man, as Steve Edwards on WTWR Tower 92, right?
Yes, I was the program director at Tower 92.
Yeah.
And when I had the chance to form a radio station that I was able to program, one of the first things I did was I ordered up a series of jingles for Tower that were the old Keener jingles. And I had them resung with the Tower 92 identity, including the Clyde package and some other things, because Keener inspired me so much. I didn't want those sounds to go away. So when Tower was at its height of success, we had some Keener sound built into it as well.
And there's something else that I think is notable and memorable. I've known you for a good number of years, and you're a gentleman and a scholar, and you have a beautiful wife named Lori, just like me. But more importantly, one day we had a whole gathering at my house. We've had numbers of gatherings at my house, and you and Scott left, and the party was over, and you guys left my house. And about 2 hours later, I walk outside to take out the garbage, and you and Scott were standing on my driveway still talking. And I said, oh my God, you guys, I got plenty of rooms in this house. You could have been in here having this conversation. You could not let each other go. So now I would like to bring in Scott Westerman, who is the brains and genius behind Keener13.com, who has created this unbelievable app, and we can still listen to Keener today. So Scott, welcome to the Franklin Show.
Thank you, Mike. And it's great to see all you guys again in the virtual flesh. My story parallels Steve Schram's in that I had a tour of Keener. My mother dragged me there one afternoon. Bob Green was on the air. I went around 15001 Michigan Avenue, and I lived in Ann Arbor, so you can imagine what it was like trying to pull the station in there. But it was the only thing that was on my car, and I stopped listening to Top 40 radio when I couldn't pick up Keener in the evening. So fast forward to our time at Michigan State, and I meet Steve Schram, and we discover we have Keener in common because we both had the demo, the Pam's demo of the Clyde jingles, and we knew that demo by heart.
WKNR, Keener 13.
And we decided, because we were both at the time working at WVIC, that we were not DJs. We were radio announcers, we were professionals, and everything we were going to do as if it was Keener. So that, the whole vibe that you all created in your own way. And I remember talking to my good friend, Bob Green, about the early days and the late days and how it wasn't always great execution. That's what we remember as the perfection. But the magic of intelligent flexibility, giving each one of these people that you've talked to, Mike, the flexibility to be themselves. For Scott Regen to hear that they brought in this big guy from New York City, Joey Reynolds, on WXYZ, and Joey was thinking about you doing the Groove Yard. And Scott heard this in real time and just totally usurped it in the moment. That was the kind of stuff that you could do back then. And I remember Ma and Pa Poppins, when Mary Poppins was the big movie, and Dick Purtan bringing in Tommy Ryan to voice those things. I remember laughing so hard at those things that you guys did. And that's what Steve and I wanted to be. But we also wanted to be, understand the business side and what made that work. And the other thing that Steve hasn't revealed is that during his leadership at that same facility, that group has yet to be, when you adjust for inflation and stuff, no other radio group has billed as much or has been as financially successful as that cluster was under Steve's leadership. So these are the people that influenced me. And we were talking about firings. The reason that Steve and I were standing in your yard for so long, Mike, is we never get to spend nearly as much time together as we'd like. So when we do, it's always until 3 a.m., and that's when the ideas come. So Steve had just been fired by Randy Michaels from WNIC. He had some time. He came down to my house. It was during my flush period when I had a big payday. Our company had been sold. I built this dream house with a full studio in it. And he and I were playing 45s and saying, dang it, we should do something to memorialize Keener 13. And there, in that moment, 26, 27 years ago, we decided, we'll create a website. And that gave us an excuse to reconnect with all of you and became the ultimate repository, because there are so many hundreds of people out there who have their own memories of Keener. They sent them all to us. We ended up getting so many of the music guides that I was able to write the book, Motor City Music, Keener 13 and the Soundtrack of Detroit, just to showcase them all. And in between the chapters, I have, as some of you participated and know, the story of Keener 13 and some biographies of some of you folks that were very kind to share that with me. And somewhere along the line, I just got sick of where radio was going. And my wife at the time said to me, just shut up and make your own. I'm sick of this. So that began the Keener Radio Project. And then we've actually had a stream for probably 17 years, but it's been under the radar until the last 2. I went through several iterations of the automation. And so, of course, when it was time to bring it above the radar, Steve and I had that thing knocked. We had it ready to go. And it is available today. You can hear it anywhere in the world. We now, as I look over at the automation right now, we have 117 concurrent listeners. We have over 91,000 uniques that listen to Keener 13 in 36 states and 11 different countries. And it blows my mind. I get kind of emotional about this, because the magic that you guys defined as great radio, I just try to emulate, and to see those people come back, to be able to, we have digital hit lines. We're on every device everywhere, as Mike said. We're on cell phones. We have an Alexa app. We're on any browser anywhere. People still love that kind of radio, and they love the stuff that you all created. And it's a reminder to me, as I talked to the great Fred Jacobs about how content is still king, that if we were still allowed to do Keener the way you did it back then, it would be number one again today.
Well, you have done a tremendous job with that site. And what I love about it is the connectivity and immediacy. If I go on Keener13.com and I want to request a song, say, Hey Little Girl, the Syndicate of Sound, that song will suddenly pop up within minutes of my request. And that reminds me of how I used to call many of these DJs that are on the show today. I was that pestering kid calling to ask for a particular song that, they would respond to.
They haven't changed. I mean, they're just older now, Mike, but they still do the same thing. And Steve and I, over the years, have compiled, with the help of guys like Jim Feliciano and others, we have every record that ever charted on Keener, and about 70%. Paul Cannon, you know this. You know it was at the bottom of the WKNR Music Guide. Some of that stuff was the stuff that you did favors for. So we have about 70% of those records available in our library right now, and you can peruse the whole thing. The other thing that I think has been interesting about Scott Regen, my evolution as a person, is that, you know, we listened to other stuff after Keener. And so I did not want to do a simple recreation of the 1960s Keener sound. I wanted it to be the soundtrack of our lives. So
Right.
you're hearing Michael Bublé and you're hearing Tom Petty, whatever it was that we listened, Melissa Manchester, all those people that we listened to along the way that would have been Keener hits are things that are in the rotations here and are still part of people's lives. And so I think that's part of it is we have to continually evolve with the platforms and the technology that's available to us, but we can't lose. And this is what the big companies who overpaid for stations and made Gary Stevens a very rich man will tell you, is that they can't afford the talent and they can't afford the flexibility to do that anymore. So that's the big opening for people like us to continue to engage with an audience and make the magic the way Keener used to.
Well, that's true. And, you know, so much of this is business, and business has changed so much. The radio industry is struggling. It's a very challenging environment because there's so much choice available. We read every day, as you mentioned, Fred Jacobs talking about the changes that are occurring. I get newsletters and emails every day from friends around the country who have lost their jobs, their careers. If you read the trades, you see Cumulus and iHeart downsizing, shutting down radio stations. A lot of AM radio stations were just shut down this week that have gone dark. So it's a challenge, but you've done a great job. And you've gone beyond the 31 songs that were on the Keener playlist all those years.
We still do the countdowns. We do the top 13. You know, we do the little taste of them this week in, 1967.
Yeah,
it's very popular. The people love it.
Well, I am in awe of you and humbly appreciative of both you and Steve Schram for doing this. It's the old labor of love thing to keep the Keener sound going. And I feel badly about that day that I found you still on my driveway 2 hours later. I said, my God, come on in. I had no idea that so anyway, that'll never happen again because I won't ever let you go until you're ready to go. All right, now we're going to try again. Jerry Goodwin. Can you?
Yes.
Oh, there he is. All right, so Jerry Goodwin, a mainstay in Detroit radio. I did a show with him a couple weeks ago, and I talked about the transition from you being that top 40 Keener 13 DJ to WABX, which was underground, progressive, crazy, long-haired hippie rock and roll. And you made that transition like others have. But I remember you as well as one of the Keener Keymen, and you've been spoken about numerous times on this program. So let's start from your arrival in Detroit on Keener 13. Jerry, take it away.
Okay. I was doing mornings in Miami with Bob Green and Ted Clark, and Mort Crowley was the morning man at KNR when they first opened and went berserk on the air. Bob had just been hired back from Miami and suggested that I might come up and do the mornings, and I was hired. At the same time, something else happened in the afternoons, and Sweeney was hired. He was coming out of Cleveland. I had to drive up from Miami. Sweeney was coming in from Cleveland. They needed a morning man right away. So that is how Sweeney ended up in the mornings, and I ended up in the afternoons. But I was originally hired to do mornings. That's that story. Frankly, that afternoon thing was beautiful. I had an opportunity to meet and work with the great Danny Thomas for St. Jude's. I will never forget that. That was just wonderful. But KNR, of course, was absolutely brilliant. The way that was programmed, the people on the air were absolutely fabulous. And by the way, I'm so glad to see all you guys. You look great, even in your old age.
Well, and you all sound great. More those
Really?
voices are so distinctive. But Jerry, so how many years were you actually on Keener before you made the transition to ABX?
Let me see now. I got there in January of '64, and I think maybe 5 years. 64. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
I think around 5 years before I went over to. Well, I was on KNR FM first, as you well know, and then went over to ABX.
Right.
So I was probably the only, I think, as far as I know, is really the only AM jock, top 40 jock who made that transition to FM and became a card-carrying hippie.
Oh, man. And I, like I say, I grew up with you because I was that kid in 1968 that transitioned from, top 40 Keener 13, the top 31 hits and all that, to this crazy, progressive, creative, unique, indescribable ABX. And I remember the transition and calling you on the phone, and I was such a thrill to hear you, but playing long form, Light My Fire and In-A-Gadda-Da-Vida and all of that.
It was exciting. The idea of being able to walk into the library and pick out what the hell ever you wanted to play.
Yeah.
And then going on the air and doing it was just, it was unheard of. I guess that's the word. It was unheard of.
Yeah, those were the great memories that I have in my youth of Detroit radio, transitioning from top 40, Keener, CKLW to ABX. And then, of course, you went on and had an illustrious career in Boston at WBCN with Mark Breno. And Mark Breno was the king of afternoon drive for decades. And you were the king of late night as the Duke of Madness on WBCN. So,
BCN was of course, was the freeform station on the East Coast, as ABX was in Detroit. KSAM was in California.
Yeah.
And it was a joy to go to my hometown. I am from Boston, and to come back to my hometown and become a radio star. My mother could finally listen to me. But then when she started listening to some of the stuff I was playing, she turned away really quick.
I'm sure she did. I'm sure she was much prouder of you when you were clean cut, and the picture that we just showed of you with your, and then all the Keener DJs, so many pictures of you guys wearing suits and ties. Like you had to dress to go on the radio back in those days. Kind of like people used to dress to get on an airplane.
Yeah, as I understand, Michael, the idea of dressing in shirt and tie was because in case we had clients and sponsors who would come by the station and they would give them the thing, they wanted us to look professional. So that's why we wore suits and ties and weird stuff.
Knowing you all as I come to know you, that was a bunch of bullshit. You could play professionals, but come on, you were just kids, man. You were kids playing records and record hops and all of that stuff. All right, Jerry, thank you so much. I'm again in awe of you. We've known you for years, and I followed your career, and we've stayed in touch all these years, along with everybody in this crazy cast of characters. This broadcast is among my favorite types. I can do anything I want on this show, and I have complete creative control. The last several weeks, I've been doing these tributes to radio because I love radio. I love broadcasting. I'm from that. And to see my heroes, the icons of broadcasting together like this warms my heart. And it's the reason that we started our Detroit radio reunions in 1988, which many of you have been to multiple times over the years, and gathered together like the old friends that you are, who haven't seen each other for years. So I'm grateful and thankful to you all. This has been a very special show. So thanks to all of my guests, and I hope that everybody out there in the audience enjoys this program as much as I enjoyed it. And good to see every one of you. You guys look great. You sound great. And it's been a pleasure to have you on the Franklin Show again. So I'm going to say goodbye to everybody. And thank you all. Good to see you. We'll stay in touch. God bless you all. And I appreciate it.
Thanks, Mike.
All right, folks, we're going to wrap this up. We've got Keener DJs, jingles, and other special surprises here on this special edition of the Franklin Show. You stay tuned, and we'll be right back.
I don't remember how it started.
Go to that.
Our back and forth. It always came back.
Dad!
You probably don't remember what you told me,
That was perfect.
but I heard every word.
Another fabulous episode of the Franklin Show. I couldn't be happier to have presented to you some of my heroes, the icons of Detroit radio back in the 60s, Keener 13, WKNR, all of these great memories that we all have growing up listening to these guys, and here they are again today. I hope you enjoyed this very special hour, and I look forward to seeing you again next time on the Franklin Show. Thanks for tuning in.